Thank you so much for coming, everyone. I'm Dr. Teckla Webb. I'm the field veterinarian for the Wyoming Livestock Board, and today I'm talking about animal disease traceability. I will tell you that this is the topic that I get the most questions about. I literally got a call about this driving here today. So I think that there's a lot of feelings about this topic, a lot of emotions, a lot of opinions, and just to be clear, that's not what we're covering today. We're just covering the facts. So let's talk about the facts. So what is animal disease traceability? This is the ability to obtain information about infected and exposed animals that are likely to spread disease. So this includes where the animals are and where they have been and when they were at each location. So this information can actually reduce the number of animals affected. So it can actually take your animals out of the picture, which is the most important thing, and ensure a quick and efficient disease response. So you're probably sitting there thinking, that's really interesting. Why do I care about this? So let's look at some Wyoming statistics. These are all the imports, livestock imports, that came into our state in 2021. This is a lot. You can see that big blue piece of the pie, that's beef cattle. It's the highest percentage of livestock animals coming in, 257,000. And let's look at what this animal disease traceability rule covers. It covers cattle and bison, okay? So if we add up all the cattle and all the bison, so exhibition cattle, rodeo cattle, dairy cattle that came in 2021, 269,000. And if those animals happen to bring something with them, a disease that we needed to trace back, you can see maybe why it would be so important for our state to be able to do this. So let's look at another scenario. We have a cow, she's diseased, but she's not showing any clinical signs. So she looks totally healthy. And she's gonna be on a ranch with other cows, okay? And they pull four, and they send them to the market. So they're sold in Wyoming. Our diseased cow goes to Montana, lucky Montana. The next cow goes to Colorado. The third cow goes to New Mexico. And the fourth cow goes to Kansas. Now, 2 years later, this cow gets culled from the Montana herd, and she's taken to slaughter. But at slaughter, they find lesions that are consistent with tuberculosis. They test this cow, and she truly is TB positive. Now, we have a problem on our hands. This cow has potentially exposed all those cattle in Montana that she was running with, and all those cows in Wyoming that she was running with. And so we have to find out, where are these exposed animals now? Some of those animals could have been sold in the past 2 years. Have they become diseased? And have they exposed other cattle to diseases? So you can see how fast a disease trace could blow up and get big. So what helps in a disease trace? The first thing is official identification. So official identification is a specific number. It's a unique number, and that is linked to the owners of that animal. So we have to have records that allow us to link both the animal and the owner. It's really important that these are good records and that everything's recorded correctly, because you can see how quickly we could go down a rabbit hole if there were any errors in these records. And we have to have documentation of animal movements. So this is your health certificates. We call those certificates of veterinary inspection. Those are your owner hauler statements. Those are showing what animals crossed the state line and when, and where did they end up. So let's talk a little bit, there we go, about identification. So the more specific the identification, the more specific the results. So how many orange 99s do you think are in Wyoming? A lot, definitely more than one. And if we look at the whole United States, orange 99 is going to lead us to many animals in many herds, and it's not going to be a clear answer as to did we get to the correct herd. Now, if we take a brand, that's more specific, right? That is licensed or registered in specific states. It's to a specific location. But I can tell you that if we look at those common brands, so let's take like bar X on the left rib, I can almost guarantee you that's licensed or registered in Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, probably all of our brand states, right? So it could lead us to a herd. Is it the correct one in the correct state? Maybe, hopefully. So it would get us maybe to the herd level. Now, if we have a specific unique number that goes to each animal, that is going to get us to the animal level. And that's what an official ID tag does. That's also what like a breed registry tattoo does that's legible, and we have paperwork with it. So you can see that the orange 99 is a generic number, and we can get more specific with a unique ID. So in 2013, the federal government, USDA, passed an animal disease traceability rule. So this has been around for over a decade. This is not new news. But in 2024, November 5th, 2024, they amended this rule. And so what I'd like to do is briefly compare what changed. There were very little changes. So the first change was official ID requirements. And in the ADT rule, the forms of official ID were EID tags, noose tags. Noose tags are metal tags. They're silver bright tags or they're Banks tags. And also a registered brand and official brand certificate, a breed registry tattoo and a breed registration certificate, or a group lot number. And it's important to point out that a registered brand and brand certificate is only accepted if both the origin state and the destination state agree to accept brands as official ID. Now, what's really important is that this rule only affected cattle and bison for interstate movement. So sexually intact cattle and bison, 18 months of age and older, dairy cattle of any age, rodeo or exhibition cattle of any age, and show cattle of any age. So in 2014, in November, the forms of ID changed. Now the tag cannot just be a metal tag, because the tag has to be read visually, be able to be read visually and electronically. So now we're looking at EID tags. Those are little button tags. And for those of you who haven't seen them, they look like this. So if you guys don't mind just passing them around so you can see. And many of you have probably seen these. You will notice that the tag number starts with 840. That determines that this is an official ID tag number. And there's also a US shield on the tag. To point out, the other options for official ID stayed the same. And the classes of cattle that needed official ID stayed the same. There was one definition that changed, and that's regarding dairy cattle. So, starting November 5th of 2024, all dairy cattle and offspring of dairy cattle require official ID. So you have a Jersey cow, you breed her to a beef bull, you have a heifer calf. That heifer calf is a dairy cow according to these rules and needs official ID to cross state lines. But there are certain instances where you might not need official ID. So if you're moving on a commuter permit, you may not need official ID depending on your destination state's requirements. To confirm, for commuter herds coming into Wyoming for summer grazing, Wyoming requires them to have official ID. If you're driving out of one state, through another state, and coming right back in, so you leave Wyoming, you drive through Idaho, and you come right back into Wyoming, you would not need official ID for that quick trip. And if cattle or bison are moved directly to an approved tagging site and the tags are placed there in another state, that is a legal movement. And the other potential exemption is between a shipping and receiving state if another form of ID is agreed upon. So that could potentially be brand inspection. Cattle going to slaughter can move with a USDA back tag. So just a reminder, these are federal rules. Destination states can have more stringent rules. I already gave you one example of Wyoming having more stringent rules. So make sure that if you're shipping cattle, that your veterinarian calls the destination state and make sure that you are current for whatever they require. So Wyoming does have some specific rules. One of them is for change of ownership. So if you're selling sexually intact cow, should be bison, should be yak, she has to be officially identified if she's a year of age, and she has to have that ID before the brand inspection and before the change of ownership. Cattle leaving the DSA. Anybody familiar with our DSA, designated surveillance area? So all sexually intact heifers, regardless of age, have to have an official ID before leaving. And there are a couple exemptions. So if you ever run into this, give me a call. We can chat. But the rule is that they are tagged before they leave. And then our commuter herds, just like what I described. Our commuter cows need to have official ID and be branded. So let's look at those record-keeping requirements. For an official ID, the ID is recorded by the person who's giving out the tag. That could be your veterinarian, that could be a market, and also the name and address of the owner is recorded at the same time. Those records have to be kept for 5 years. And those CVIs, those health certificates to move interstate, those records also have to be kept for 5 years for most livestock species. It's a little shorter for swine and poultry because they have a short lifespan. And in 2024, this pretty much stayed the same. But they clarified that the records have to be in an accessible record system. So the back of the pickup truck with a million other things back there and you're never gonna find the paper, it's probably not classified as a good record-keeping system. And the records need to be of good quality, completeness, and they have to be able to be provided to the USDA if we have an animal disease outbreak within 48 hours. So this is where things like Excel come in really handy. And the Control F function, because you can Control F, type in that tag, and it would show up on your spreadsheet, just as an example. Really easy to find a tag compared to like digging through all your boxes of paperwork. So in conclusion, I find that there's a lot of misconceptions about what these tags do and what they don't. So you just held them and looked at them. The tag in and of itself doesn't prevent disease. It doesn't provide a bubble around a cow so that it never gets a disease. And that is not a GPS tag. It does not track your animals in real time so that you can see that they're on your neighbors and you need to go get them. So all they do is they have a little chip, and when you scan it, it reads a number. And you have to be really close. You cannot read it from the sky or from a helicopter or driving by. You have to be about 6 inches away, and I can show you that. I did bring a reader. But ADT does provide a tool to determine where the diseased animal has traveled. And we can identify at-risk animals and control a disease outbreak. And the more quickly that we can control a disease outbreak, the less economic impact we'll have on our producers in our state and also at the national level. And this equals money. So I do have a Q&A. This is probably the most common questions I get asked. So I thought I would go through this, and then I am happy to take any questions you have on this topic. So, are there free EID tags? And it says still available because what happens is the federal government, the USDA, allocates tags to the livestock board, to our state, and then we give out those tags to our veterinarians. And then our veterinarians give them out to producers. And they're given out when heifers are bangs vaccinated, or if a vet's writing a health certificate, some of those animals need ID, or for heifers that are leaving the DSA. We used up our allotment. The previous allotment that Wyoming's been given is 114,000 tags. We bangs vaccinate like about 150,000 heifers alone a year, so this doesn't really cover our need. The Livestock Board does not have a budget to purchase these tags. Some states do, but Wyoming does not have a line item in the budget to purchase tags. However, a most recent update is that we just got a shipment of tags. So your veterinarian will have bangs tags and will be able to provide those to you. We did not get any yellow or white tags yet for official ID, but we hope to get those hopefully soon. So how would you get tags? The best way is to call your veterinarian and tell them that why you need the tags and how many you need, and see if they can provide them. And a lot of veterinarians are having to buy tags, and so the charge would be passed on to you, just so that's not a surprise. You can also purchase tags directly from manufacturers. So Ytex, Allflex, Datamars, All Data, those are some main brands that are manufacturing these ID tags. Do I need to place EIDs in all cattle? No. So remember, this is for cattle moving interstate that are sexually intact, 18 months of age or older, dairy cattle, and rodeo show exhibition cattle. And of course, DSA, if you're moving cattle, heifers outside of the DSA. Do beef feeder steers need an EID to move interstate? No, they're not sexually intact. But double check with your state, because the state of destination might have more stringent requirements. Arizona. Anyone shipping to Arizona? Corianis, roping steers? They want them? Yeah. And those would be classified as rodeo cattle, actually.
Oh, they want them to send feeders.
They do. Okay, that's really good to know. So, guys, if you're shipping to Arizona, to call your vet, get tags. Do beef feeder heifers need an EID? So, not usually, but your destination state could have more stringent requirements. Typically not if they're under 18 months of age and older, and maybe they're not going to Arizona. Have to look at their requirements. Do I need to place EIDs in cattle that already have an official metal tag? No. So that metal tag is grandfathered in. That metal bangs tag or that silver bright tag is grandfathered in, and you do not have to place a second tag. So if you have a 4-year-old beef calf, it still has our OCD metal bangs tag in place. Again, you don't have to place an EID tag if you're selling her and she's going out of state. Can cattle have more than one official ID? This is a little confusing, so the answer is yes and no. Clear as mud, right? So yes, cattle and bison can have 2 official ID tags if one is a metal tag and one is an EID tag. So let's say that you run EID tags in your place, you're set up to do that, and you want everything to have an EID, you can place a tag, even if that heifer has a metal bangs tag, you can place an EID tag in that. But you cannot place 2 EID tags. This causes mass confusion. We only want one official identification tag to trace back, right? And this causes confusion because there are value-added tags that are distributed. So those are 900 series tag. They don't start with 840. They start with 900. They look like that little button tag. They don't have a U.S. shield. That's not official ID. But if your cows have one of those 900 tags and one of the 840 tags, that also gets to be a challenging situation. Those value-added tags are scanned at the plant. But when you scan with a reader, sometimes it'll pick up the 900, sometimes it picks up the 840. And so what I would do is I highly recommend you to contact your value-added program and say, look, can we just get 840 tags? Because then that covers you for everything. Covers you for movement and your value-added programs. And I've noticed that the value-added programs have started to switch over. I know Redding now uses 840s. Does anyone else know of other? How about sheep and goats? Are they required to have an EID tag? No, the rule only applies to cattle and bison. But can a sheep or goat have one? They can. They're just not required to by this ADT rule. Let's talk about placement of EID tags. The EID tag can go in the left ear or the right ear. But I would just like to caution you that if you are tagging your calves with an EID tag, like at birth, we have multiple folks doing that now, that EID tag is probably yellow or white because it counts for an official ID. But that will also become that heifer's bangs tag. It's not orange, and that's okay. But make sure that you place it right so that when she's banged, your vet has enough room in the ear to place that tattoo. So if you can look at this picture, usually, there we go. See how close to the head you want to place these if you're placing it in the right ear? That bangs tattoo has to go in the right ear, and it can fit on the outside as long as this tag is placed at about the 25% mark on the ear. Okay. Otherwise, if that makes you nervous, just put the EID tag in the other ear. It might upset your vet, but they usually get over it, right, Dr. Oldham? Vets are very used to putting the bangs tag in the right ear. We've done that forever. It's like ingrained in you from day one, so change is hard. Why are they doing this? So you guys, it comes back to traceability. This reduces human error. When we scan that EID tag, that number is read correctly. We've probably all tried to read numbers in the chute. It is not easy. They're moving around. The metal tags are worn off, especially if you're trying to read a button tag visually and you're trying to spin it to read it. So if we can read them electronically and submit electronic records, we know they're right. We know that we're searching for the right animal and the correct number. This reduces those disease traces from from days to hours. And that is what is huge for our industry and to keep our livestock safe. So any questions on ADT? I have more updates after this. Not yet. I'm just going to pull out a reader really quick. Because I get a lot of concerns about how close you have to be to actually read a tag. And so I'm just going to demonstrate that, and I'll pass this around as well with a tag. So it's looking for it right now. So 8 inches maybe. Helicopter can't read these tags. I would just like to emphasize that because I get a lot of questions about it. The only thing that comes up is this number. It's not a social security number. It's not a bank account number. Just to clarify, there are fancier tags that can do more. They can read a cow's temperature. They can do other things, but they're not linked to your info. Now your phone is probably tracking you, where you're at, what you're looking at horses, like all these horse ads coming up, This tag doesn't do that. It just doesn't have those capabilities. One other comment is that these tags have to be manufactured with strict requirements. So there's a specific term that I'm blanking on, and I'm sorry, but it's something about free trade. So we do not buy these parts from China, because China is not part of our free trade agreement. These parts only come from certain countries that are approved by the United States, and China is not on the list. So with that, I know you girls are good at this, but we'll pass it around just so that the folks that haven't used a reader can see it. How many in the room, you guys, raise your hand, have I called you about a disease trace? Yeah, thank you for being honest. We actually call a lot of people about this. And so this presentation sounds like it's just like an interstate thing, or like Montana got a cow, or Arizona got a cow. No, we actually we have disease in our state. We perform disease traces regularly. If you get a phone call from me, please answer it. I'm just trying to help you and your livestock. No one's getting in trouble. Most recently, we had another trick outbreak in Wyoming. But I'd like to start historically. We didn't have trick for 5 years in our state. It was undetectable. And we tested probably 10,000, 12,000 bulls a year. So it was really incredible that we had no trick for 5 years. But in 2022, we had a case. Carbon County. And In January of 2024, we had a case. Fremont County. And in November of this year, we had another case in Lincoln County. And so when this happens, the state contacts all the potential contacts to the trich-infected herd, and everybody's quarantined. And so I just wanted to provide this as an example for how traceability works in our state and why it's so important. Trich is really, really infectious. Luckily, with this recent outbreak, it was one bull that was diagnosed trich positive. All the bulls have cleared quarantine. They've all been tested, and we found no additional cases. So really good news. You guys don't let your guard down on trich. Keep trich testing. This is why we're only finding an occasional bull here or there. And that's, if we find it, that's what we want to find. We definitely don't want to be finding mass outbreaks. As far as brucellosis goes, I think that probably everyone in this room is aware that Wyoming deals with a regulatory disease, brucellosis, every year. We're special. We're special along with Montana and Idaho, that we share the greater Yellowstone area where there are elk that are infected with brucellosis. This is something that's not going to go away, but this is another example of how traceability is really important in our state. We do require Bangs vaccination statewide, and as we already discussed, Bangs vaccination requires an official ID. And the DSA has specific testing requirements. So anytime we're testing a cow for brucellosis, she cannot just have an orange 99 tag. She has to have an official ID on the test chart. So another way that we're able to trace this disease. And all of those heifers that I talked about that leave the DSA have to have an official ID. And this is part of our whole surveillance program for the state. And what this does is that it makes our cattle marketable, and it keeps our borders open for cattle buyers in other states. This allows us to ship out of state. And you guys all know that we're an export state. We don't have tons of feedlots. We don't have the feed and the corn right here. And so we really are an export state. We ship out a lot. And so this disease traceability and having all these in place are what allows us to catch disease early and trace it and handle it well and keep our borders open. So that was all my disease updates, but I'm happy to chat about any other questions you might have. Let me check on the time. I might mention HPAI really quickly. I could have probably talked the entire time on that topic, so yeah. I didn't bring it up to start with. But you guys have probably all heard that HPAI is still in birds, but now we're also dealing with that in dairy cattle. So back in March in Texas, there was a transmission event from a wild bird to a dairy cow, and the dairy cow contracted HPAI and then subsequently spread it from dairy cow to dairy cow. The virus is shed at really, really high levels in the milk. And so we've seen folks that both work with poultry and also work in the dairies with infected animals have also contracted this form of HPAI. The disease is mild, it's mostly conjunctivitis, but for people with other underlying health conditions, HPAI or high-path avian influenza can cause, more severe disease in people. Wyoming is not immune to this, but we're just not a large poultry state or a large dairy state, so I think we're lucky in that manner. I guess we have brucellosis instead. So we're not seeing lots of outbreaks is what I'm saying, because we don't have the populations. We are seeing our wildlife are testing positive for HPAI, most notably birds. And we used to see HPAI as a seasonal disease. So we'd see it in the spring and we'd see it in the fall during migratory season. But what's really changed is that we're seeing it all year round now. There's no break period. And my goodness, those states like Texas, California, especially California, huge dairy state, huge poultry state, they're dealing with a lot of cases. So, yeah. Caution, just, a caution. These milk cows, they get sick, but they don't die. The poultry gets so sick that they die really quickly. 24 to 48 hours, you have 80% death loss. The cows get through this. But they get through this with extensive supportive care. They get really dehydrated, and their milk production plummets. But with a lot of fluid therapy, they get through this just fine. You can imagine trying to tube like a lot of dairy cows every day. It's a big job to get them through. Why I'm telling you this is because we're more of a beef state. So you folks that have beef cattle, I get a lot of questions about what about beef cattle and could they get it? And they absolutely could. We haven't had reports, and maybe that's just yet. But the other thing is dairy cattle are on this metabolic edge, right? They're getting pushed really hard for their milk production. And so our beef cattle are just managed differently, and they're not quite pushed to the edge metabolically. And so we may not see them. They may just be subclinical. I think why I'm telling you all this is because if you have sick calves, make sure that one of the things you do is check the cow. And check, does she have milk? Is she sick? And is that the reason why the calf is sick? Is that secondary? Oftentimes we look at the calf. You guys probably all do this, right? Give it some boluses, give it some fluids, some electrolytes. Yeah, you're like, okay. And the cow is always kind of in the background. You don't really look at her. But I would urge you to look at the cow, just to make sure.
So she would just be depressed.
What we see with the dairy cows is exactly depression. They stop eating. One of the things is that their milk production plummets, and so that's one of the things that they'll identify first as they're going through the parlor. They're usually heavy lactation, and all of a sudden, the next day. And so those are the things we see in dairy cattle. I'm extrapolating for beef because we just don't know. We haven't had that experience. But my suspicion is that they would most likely be subclinical, but probably a drop in milk production that could affect a calf.
Kind of hard to.
Not easy to identify, right? Yeah, and I think that the way we would maybe pick it up is because the calf isn't getting the adequate nutrition.
Yeah.
If you've got 100 chickens, medium, and you're working on the cow too, then you better be paying attention.
If you need
Or if you got
chickens
a bunch of wild geese that are getting in the river,
Certainly.
something like that,
Okay.
that's when they're gonna get it. That's the reason they're getting the dairy cows, you're getting the crossover of the workers and the chickens and dairies in the same area, same farms. Like she said, we don't see that here on the beef cow very often, but you could. Somebody had some backyard chickens and was working on their, cow at the same time or something.
I'm going to repeat that louder so everyone can hear it, because that was an excellent comment that Dr. Oldham just made. And it's about the proximity of wild birds and domestic poultry and cattle. And so if you're seeing dead birds on your place, that is a red flag. If you are seeing dead domestic poultry, that is a dead flag, or a red flag, so your backyard poultry. If you see that, call your vet, and please call the livestock board as well, so that we can assist with testing costs. Because there is crossover between these wild birds, the domestic birds, and the cattle spreading this disease back and forth.
Yeah, yesterday the Wildlife Services came from Casper.
Oh,
He talked
fantastic.
about- He said they found 2 mountain lions in Wyoming, and maybe they scavenged off a dead bird or something.
Yes.
If they died as well.
So the large cats are very susceptible to this, and actually domestic cats are as well. So what's always around the dairies? Cats, right? But on these infected dairies, the cats have also been dying because they drink the milk, and like I said, it's really heavily infected with virus. And multiple mammals have been infected with HPAI. So for example, seals, coyotes, foxes, weasels, I could go on and on. The USDA has an excellent map, but anything that's scavenging on something that died from HPAI, that carcass has a lot of virus in it. And so those scavengers are tending to get sick and die.
How long does the virus live?
In the environment?
Or, yeah, in a dead animal?
That is a great question, and I'm not sure I have the answer to that, but I can sure look it up and get back to you.
Oh.
I think there's probably multifactorial depending on temperature, UV light. You know, if it's cooler temperatures and shaded, probably have some better survivability. It's not, the virus in and of itself is not a very hardy virus in the environment, but obviously it can live for some time. Any other disease questions or animal questions I can answer? I know that one complaint I get is that those tags are hard to place. They are. It's real. I went out on a herd test and I had to do 700 head and I forgot my tagger and I about cried. But I wanted to show you that there are other options for placing these tags easily. And so this happens to be a battery operated tagger. I really like it because it's quiet and it's fast. This little tag bowls, no problem. And it'll go right through the gears. So just one option of many things available. I also have a pneumatic tagger set up, so that's attached to an air compressor. As you can imagine, it's kind of loud and it's a little bit cumbersome. It's heavier, and so I've gone to using this style. This battery lasts me all day. So if you want, I can pass this around. Don't put your hands in the jaws. You can't be responsible for that. But I think it's a nice little unit. Makes placing those tags a lot easier. Of course, the other option is this hand tagger. And you can see the range of grasp that you need. And you know, like 5 is okay. 10 is probably okay. 20, oh, I really want that one. So I'll pass this around behind it. Midnight cattle tags.
So what is the cost per tag?
Cost per tag. Thank you, that's an excellent question. It varies. And it varies based on who you buy the tag from and how many you buy. So there's oftentimes bulk discounts. So for example, you know, feedlots of veterinarians who are really going through a lot of tags might get slightly lower prices. Oftentimes about $1 to $2 a tag.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, say, like in sale barn setting, you have to run those cattle back through the chute after the sale to IBM to go to the state.
Yes.
What about the cost of that?
Yes, so that is set by the sale barn. They are what's called a tagging facility, and so they are licensed by the USDA to do that. That requires time, it requires labor, and so they charge for that service.
Yeah.
Since it is a service. Yeah, so I can't speak for an official tagging site, but I think my goal is for you to understand why there would be a charge.
Right. I work on there.
Well, there you go. You understand actually. Yeah.
Curious how that's going to be justified. Is that?
Yep. Like I said, right now, you know, the USDA has been providing free tags, but as I think you might have come in late, so I don't know if you saw the stats. Do you see that? It doesn't quite meet our total need, and so unfortunately, it is what it is. So there's a gap there, and folks are having to purchase some tags.
So adding on to that, Teckla,
Yes.
so there will never be funding for the tags from you guys or the USDA again.
So,
Because that was our question, because they're like $2.75 to $3 a piece, and we're trying to make those easier for the public and for our producers and our cattle producers. And that was one of Glenn's questions, is there ever going to be USDA funding again? Is there gonna be a grant, or do we need to start charging people more?
thank you for asking that question. So the issue with the tag shortage was because Congress didn't pass a budget. So they passed a continuing resolution, which gives the federal government only part of their budget, but that does not allow USDA to order all the tags that are needed. And so no tags were ordered. And so until the federal government gets a budget, the USDA doesn't have the money to buy the tags. So it's not that there isn't any money, it's that the budget wasn't passed. We did, like I said, get a small shipment, and so your clinic will be receiving some
Mhm.
as well. It was not our total allocation though, so we do expect to get more tags.
So the 114,000 tags that you're allocated already, is that what we're gonna get again, or will they increase now that we're doing the tagging everything above 18 months?
That is an excellent question. And the answer is that we don't know yet. They haven't told us what our allocation is going to be for sure. But we think that it should stay the same. There hasn't been any indication that it would be decreased for this year.
Okay.
How long has the government been running on a continuing resolution? Was that the holdup, or?
So that is
That's
a
yours.
holdup. Because they haven't passed the budget. And I think we would all love to have the answer to that question. Challenging in many ways. And like I said, our state does not currently have a line item to purchase these tags. But other states have done that.
Have you done it in the past?
They have not done that in Wyoming in the past.
So our cattle people have a heifer, hits the ground, they put their own EID in there and it's white. You said that we can't really put in another Bangs tags.
That white EID tag becomes the Bangs tag.
So we need to write that down instead of assigning them what we bring.
Exactly. That white tag is their Bangs tag. And how they prove it is that Bangs certificate that you give them has that tag number on it. That heifer also has a tattoo in her ear. And so that paperwork becomes a little bit more important since the visual is not orange, but it's legal and
Okay.
good to go.
And it's still 15 numbers with 840.
Correct. The shield, the 840, yes. And absolutely, you guys, rangers can place those white and yellow tags. It's just like you guys placing the silver bright tags, the metal tags. So you just get them from your veterinarian. Your veterinarian assigns you, these 50 tags, writes down the first number and the last number, and then you can place them. Well, thank you very much for coming, you guys. I'm happy to answer any other questions on the
I
side.
actually read blue ones, but I was late, so I can ask them later.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I just raised a lot of country. What's the latest on avian influenza status in Fremont County? And then also, I heard some rumblings that the livestock board might require testing of raw milk for avian influenza, and I was wondering where that was at.
Really good questions. So right now in Fremont County, we do not have any quarantines in place or affected flocks.
There was some wild birds, though.
I believe there wasn't. I'm sorry. I do get some of those results, but I don't track them as well. Better question for Wildlife Services, and I can get you the answer. But I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. As far as testing milk, and I'd like to elaborate on your question. If you're selling a lactating dairy cow, so maybe you pulled the calf off, but she has milk in her bag, just to clarify, she needs to have an HPAI test before she's sold. And that's if she's sold within the state or if she's going out of state. So call your veterinarian. We can provide instruction on how to collect that sample. As far as the testing for raw milk, there's been some changes with the federal government surveillance for HPAI. And so yes, there are some changes in the works. I don't know specifically about raw milk sales. That's more complicated in Wyoming with our Food Freedom Act. I think what I would tell you guys is be alert and be aware. This is something that could be in raw milk. It is killed by pasteurization. And yes, it can make you sick. So I would just be aware of those risks, is all.
With the bird flu sticking around, right? It used to just come and then it would go, and now we've had it for a higher level for a few years. Is Wyoming thinking of starting to become like other states and require NPIP for poultry going across county lines, or is it just going to stay in non-commercials?
We are a non-commercial state just because we don't have commercial poultry in our state, and so I haven't heard of that being discussed, and I think that's primarily because we're not commercial poultry. Now, these terms that we're using, you guys, commercial poultry, that's like this definition that USDA provides, and it's so many birds.
A lot of birds.
A lot of birds, a lot of chickens. We don't have people with a lot of chickens. We're talking barns of chickens. So all the backyard flocks is termed non-commercial poultry, and so that's what we're talking about. That's essentially everybody in Wyoming, and so because of that distinction, we don't have really strict poultry rules. Yeah, I haven't heard of any discussion. We'll be sure to notify you if anything's in the works.
I had a question on the bison. The bison are not required to have brand specs, I don't think. And then, but you are requiring that they have a EID tag if they're sold. But there's nothing that traces the sale of them. You don't have to have brand specs, I'm pretty sure.
I need my
I'll look.
local brand here. I don't.
Maybe you have to have brand specs, but you don't have. There's no brand. I'll check on that.
Yeah, even if it's no brand, I know that you have to have brand inspection. I'm not 100% sure about bison, but I can find out for you.
Bison are kind of weird because they're also wildlife. Yeah.
So there are wild bison and then there are domestic bison, and
Yeah.
yes, it's. But if we're talking about domestic bison, interstate movement, yes, the ID is required.
You're gonna have to have ID interstate, but your, Wyoming's rules say you have to have change of ownership in the state, but I don't think they're tracking change of ownership, that's what.
I see what you're saying. That is a good thing to look into. Thank you. So bovine, you guys, that term encompasses beef cattle, yaks, and bison. I think the yaks sometimes don't get mentioned because they're a lower population, but they're still very important.
There's more and more of them I'm seeing around though as just hobby animals.
Yeah, certainly. I think their popularity is increasing. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate your time today. Great to see you, Melissa.
What was your main talk about? I saw you and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to just go ask them for that.
I had to leave your talk early.
Now I understand you were over here.
Yeah.
Talking about business stuff.
It's mostly about animal disease traceability, just because it's kind of the hot topic. It's kind of boring, but it's like,
Yeah.
And I did a few
the food, I have a bunch of questions here, but with the food businesses I work with, a lot of them are doing wrong with dairy. So more and more of them are talking about, influenza. And because of my poultry background, I'm like, well, I actually know a little about it, but I don't know dairy.
so like California, they're testing Wyoming.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what's going to happen in Wyoming. We're a very different political climate.
Yeah, with the Food Freedom Act.
I think just public safety and knowledge and risk assessment is important because I know that there's been some illnesses associated with that in California.
Yeah, the humans.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
why I've been encouraging raw milk producers, most of them are very independent.
Sure.
Raw milk.
Certainly.
More like, this is for human health. No one wants another COVID, and everyone's like, yeah, we don't want another COVID. I'm like, yeah.
It's exactly
Great. We're on the same page. Let's not do it. But good to see you all.
You
Good
too.
questions.
Hi, you guys. How can I help you?
We need a picture for.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Do you have a phone?
Yeah, give me your phone. And then Chaz.
Is this proof that you were here?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what- Okay. Where
You
do you
guys
want
go
to
and
stand?
then you guys can just take a picture. Sure, that works.
So, where do you guys go to school?
PwC, it's right here, yeah.
So, thank you for coming.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
I don't know if you can send that to all of us.
Thanks for coming, you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
So just put it in your chest.
No.
Oh, thank you for returning my tagger.
Oh, yeah.
We're the actions that they're great, except the rest of us. It was good. And just like yours, it was videoed, so they should post it.
But,
Can I grab the copy? Actually bought this one.
changed needle out on one and started working for that one.
Well, if you're putting that many in, you should probably have more.
Well, we do, but it gets to all of them.
When you guys do so many, you should probably have more than one. I didn't put your wand in there right, did you fix it?
Oh, it's in here.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So then I had some questions on this tag